Is Albania really that dangerous? Well, that scene was completely made up. Albania isn't anything like that. You can wander the streets at night, but let's get into the actual numbers. So the reason that we even made this video is because when we first arrived here, we got a lot of messages. These kind of messages were very frightening. For example, this person said they are in Albania. They were saying how they can't afford guns right now. They're stuck with knives to save themselves, I guess. Saying how it's really hard. I can't believe that you are coming to the most dangerous place in Europe. Another person said they are a Canadian, and they said Albanians hate us. People treat us like trash everywhere and threaten to kill us. We literally have no place to live in Albania for foreigners. There's no food to be bought. Everything is more expensive here than any nation in the world. And even when I replied to one of them about the fact that you can't get guns here very easily, other than I guess rifles for hunting, that kind of thing, or if you're up in the mountains, and they came back and said, no, guns are completely legal. So is weed, meth, cocaine, sex slaves, murder. Some of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. None of those things are legal here, to be very clear. And so this video is very important. We got lots and lots of these messages. We got threats of all kinds. We were told that we were going to be murdered if we come here, that kind of thing. And it's absolutely insane. Fact of the matter is, as you know, we're from Canada, so Canadians, and many people think of Canada as one of the safest countries in the world. Well, Canada had 743 murders in 2020. Canada's population is 10 times what it is here in Albania. So let's just work it out to say, okay, let's just remove one of the decimal points, and that means 74 murders in comparison to what Albania would be. There were 61 homicides in Albania in the same year. And homicides don't necessarily mean murders, as we all know. So you can see already that there are less people being murdered here in Albania than there are in Canada per capita. Another interesting fact is that there are 60% more police per person here in Albania than in the United States. So in a place that people believe that there are police everywhere, there's actually more here. And you see them. You see them quite often. Right now we are under a curfew. Well, we've been curfew actually since we got here. When we first got here, the curfew was 10 p.m. And it was a little different because the curfew at the beginning was only enforced really on the businesses. And they would go around and honk the horns and warn them, right at 10 o'clock, hey, it's time to close. And then the businesses would, dim the lights and not allow new people in. And the cops would get out sometimes and come and talk to the owners, say, hey, you gotta shut things down. And, it was like, they were very, very flexible. Then came the summer. Well, summer means tourism, and they pushed it to midnight. So the curfew was the same sort of thing, but it felt like it was only enforced on some businesses. The nightclubs seemed to somehow stay open until 2 o'clock in the morning, that kind of thing. So we went from 10 p.m. to midnight, and we could still go out for walks at night. Nobody really cared. The police would go by you. Nobody would care. There'd be people walking home. Wasn't an issue. It was really only enforced on the businesses. If the businesses are all closed, well, you're not going to get crowds of people, and it didn't cause a lot of, problems it didn't cause any problems if you're walking about. I remember one time she lost her wedding ring and had to go back, and I guess she had whipped it in her hand and it fell off and it went rolling onto the street somewhere. And so we went back to that area where we thought we lost it, and they even, I kept pulled over and said, hey, what's up? Because they can see me searching the streets. And and you know, they don't understand a lot of English, but they understood what I was saying, and they said, you know, well, if you need any help or anything, good luck. And you know, I'm looking all over the place until probably 3 o'clock in the morning. We found it, by the way. We were very lucky. So there was no issues. Now that's changed. I believe it was September 1st. They went back to 10 p.m. and by November, they were literally not allowing people on the streets. They were now enforcing it on the people. You are not allowed to go for a walk after 11 p.m. when they made the curfew at 11. And so they're very, very hardcore on it now. I've been questioned, you know, if I'm editing videos and I leave late, that kind of thing. They didn't really know much English, but they just said, go home. You know, after I kept telling him and trying to explain, he's like, what kind of work do you do? What kind of work? So there was a whole little bit of an issue there, and they seem to have gotten a lot more strict. You see them patrolling every 30 minutes down the streets. You can see them because they drive, when police drive around here, they drive with their lights on, not just because they're going to an accident or a crime or anything like that. They leave their lights on all the time when they're driving around, and so you can see them at night because you see the blue flickering, and you can just look out your window and you see them driving around and sometimes shining a light along the sidewalk, that kind of thing. So yeah, the police presence here is quite high. So obviously keeps the streets extremely safe, having that many police out. They do, when we were coming back from the airport, there was, because it was like middle of the night one night, and they had checkpoints to ask why you're out after curfew, that kind of thing, all along the highways. And so that's actually pretty common to have these checkpoints set up. We see them up on the roads at night ourselves from our balcony. So they're very strict about it. You are not allowed out after curfew, and the curfew does change based on that. But so anybody who's worried about walking around at street, well, we can't talk about it now because you're not allowed out after 11 p.m. But when we were in the summer, we could walk the streets late at night, no problem. Bianca was at a party one night and got out late with a bunch of expats in an apartment, and she had walked back, and her only trouble walking alone at night along the streets was just some guy saying, hey, you wanna go party, you know, that kind of thing, you know, trying to do a pickup line sort of thing, no different than you would find in any other country. And she said no, and he just left. So it was not an issue. So there was no fear or anything like that. As for petty crime, we almost never see anything here. We've seen a couple like minor vehicle accidents, like bumper rubs, and the whole town comes to check it out. Like, it seems like everybody leaves their buildings or their stores or everything just to stand around. There's a giant crowd around them, and because there's not a lot that goes on around here. I don't see anything go on. I know, like, sometimes kids will play around cars and then start pulling on the car doors, and they're all unlocked because people just don't lock them very often here. And now this might be different, I get it, in the capital and all that, but I'm talking about Saranda itself. And when we were in the capital, we saw no crime, to be very clear. One gentleman that we know or knew of, and he was at the hostel, and there's this table and chairs right on the main street, easily 3 feet in, you could grab things. He left his laptop out there on all day long. I guess he hadn't had a nap, and he just had too long of a nap. Nobody touched it. How many places could say that on a street where it's not in the tourist area, just very local, you know, thousands of people go by it every day, and no one touched his laptop? It's extremely safe here. You could probably go to a cafe and leave your laptop there, and I can't imagine anybody would ever take it from you. Of course, when you get a bunch of rowdy people together, you're going to get fist fights or that kind of thing, and they seem to be very preemptive on that here. So at our soccer games, I've already shown on other videos that they bring out tons of police during the football, soccer games. Soccer if you're in the United States, football if you're anywhere else in the world. So they bring all this police out, and just their presence alone kind of gets rid of any of the fights, as well as the one big popular nightclub they have in town. They bring a ton of police out every night in front of that nightclub that it's open, and they patrol that area, and there's cops out on the street like crazy. So they're very preventative on that kind of thing, so that there really isn't a lot of problems. That doesn't mean there isn't any. Obviously, we pointed out there were 61 homicides last year. So it does happen, and it did happen more frequently, because you would think during all these restrictions and stuff like that there'd be less, but actually there were more homicides last year, and most of it is because of domestic abuse and stuff like that. And I think a lot of countries during lockdown saw an increase in domestic abuse. If you were looking for real dangers in this country, it would be like driving late at night through these mountains. Very treacherous. You see a lot of the grave sites that people have set up, or I guess they're not grave sites, but where the accident happened, they put on like a cenotaph and flowers and stuff like that, and you see them quite frequently, because it is quite dangerous, especially in the winter when it gets icy. Also, like, the chances of you hitting a sheep or a cow or something like that on the road are going to be very high. We run into them all the time. When I say run into them, come near them. We don't run into them, but that's very frequent, so that's going to happen. Here you get packs of wild dogs. Like, that's very, very normal here. In town, like just 2 days ago, we had 5 or 6 of them that just came and followed us, and they like escort you basically all over. They're super friendly, tails wagging, they all pet us and everything, and every once in a while they have their own little fights on the streets, the dogs, that kind of thing. That's a very normal thing here. Now, I don't know this firsthand, but I'm told that yes, in town they're all very friendly, but go outside of town and their little packs of dogs, not so friendly. So maybe you should be careful, obviously, of that. If you're walking in the country and you come across a bunch of dogs, and I should actually say, yes, I did have that one video where I explained that I almost got it mauled by very vicious dogs when we were up in the mountains, because they were, I guess, protection for a farm, and the woman who lived there came running out, and she couldn't even seem to stop them, because once they decide they're going to attack you, they're going to attack you. And when I say packs, they circle you, and they come at you in different angles, so that I was taking my backpack to protect myself on every single angle that I could. So yeah, I guess I can say that I know firsthand that the dogs outside of here quite possibly could be dangerous, but in that case those were owned dogs and not wild dogs. But we can safely say, for the both of us, and I've been all over the place, that this is the safest place I've ever been in the world. And I have been many places, and the scene that we did at the beginning there, that's the type of scene that I ran into in like Cincinnati, where I was chased by gangs when I just went for a walk to the corner store at 11 p.m. at night, and it was one of the scariest times I had in my life, and I barely got away. Like, they had me cornered at one point. So to say that it's super dangerous here is not to put into perspective of other countries like the United States, like Canada. So here, I don't want anybody to worry. Yes, things can happen, but it's going to be extremely infrequent. And if you get involved in drugs or gangs or anything, of course, it's going to be dangerous for you. But for the average person, no. This is a very, very safe place to be. Also, you see in my images here in the beginning, you see all these abandoned places, what would appear to be abandoned places, let's say derelict buildings. These aren't abandoned. What happens here is everything is owned. Many things are generational. Like, for example, Jason, that we spoke here, many of the buildings around are all owned by cousins, and they've been here for 1,700 years, I believe, unless there's something lost in translation. And then even when we were in Garecaster with that one family, they've been there since something like 1200 AD, something like that, their family. And so they've owned this property for literal centuries. And so a lot of the property here, that's the way it works. Now, those family members may not even live in this country anymore. They may not have any the resources to build on it, so they just leave it the way it is, because it keeps going up in value, and property values here in Saranda are really, really high. Everybody wants to come here. The average one of these lots, especially near the water, are going to be $1 million, and you still got to build the building on top of that. So that's a very, very common thing to have these type of buildings like that. Also, with the fall of communism, I was told that because all the records were lost and the new government was being formed, everybody raced to build just the base structure of concrete, just to show 4 stories, 5 stories, 6 stories, so that when the new government was getting all their ducks in a row and all their paperwork done, they could say it was already zoned for a 4-story building or a 5-story building. So they didn't have to worry about any type of zoning or anything like that. And they can always build, or like tear down and build, or renovate that up to 4 stories, 5 stories, or whatever they put in place. And so there was a big rush to put all these concrete structures up with no intention of actually building anytime soon. And so that's what a lot of these are. Some of them also were, when they go in to build it, they use substandard building practices, and then it was deemed that no, you can't live in it because it's not been built right. And so they just left it because they didn't have the money to redo the whole thing. So I've heard different things. We get a lot of comments in the comment section explaining. So they're not these abandoned, scary places or anything like that. These are high value properties that are all owned, just owned by many of the different families that are here and have been here for many hundreds of years. And they're just waiting for one day to either build on it, or when the price is right, they'll sell it. Well, there's one actually just right around the corner here, and it's, I think, 5 stories, 6 stories, something like that. And he's been in New York, and of course he got it willed to him for many generations as well, and he sold it for $700,000, I'm told. So now that will have to be torn down because that concrete has just been sitting out in the rain. It's gotten full of water, and it's not structurally sound. So that whole thing will come down, and he'll have to build a new one to go there. Very interesting stuff, but outside of that, it's not because of earthquakes or natural disasters or crime or anything like that. It was just left there because there's some value to it, and there's no real bylaws that say you have to keep it clean like you would find in Canada or something, where they make the person who owns the property keep it clean or make sure that no one can live in it or anything like that. So it is a bit different.